History is filled with audacious criminals, bank robbers, con artists, master thieves, but most of them have one thing in common. They eventually get caught. But on the eve of Thanksgiving 1971, one man broke the mold. He committed a crime so bold, so clean, that it became an instant legend. He hijacked a commercial airliner, secured a massive ransom, and then did the one thing no one expected. He vanished, without a trace, leaving behind a nation baffled, an FBI case that remains open to this day, and one of the greatest, most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. Who was he? Did he survive? This is the complete story of the man they call D.B. Cooper. Our story begins on November 24th, 1971, at Portland International Airport. It's a busy travel day. A man, described as being in his mid-40s, wearing a dark business suit, a white shirt, and a black necktie, walks up to the Northwest Orient Airlines counter. He uses cash to buy a one-way ticket to Seattle. The name on the ticket? Dan Cooper. He boards flight 305, a Boeing 727, and takes his seat in the rear of the plane, seat 18C. He lights a cigarette, and before you ask, yes, lighting cigarettes were allowed before the 2000s. He lights a cigarette and calmly orders a bourbon and a soda. He seemed, by all accounts, like just another businessman on a routine flight. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper hands a folded note to a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. Thinking it was just a lonely businessman's phone number, she slips it into her purse. Cooper leans closer and says, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner does as he says. Cooper briefly opens his briefcase and she sees a mess of wires and red-colored sticks. The threat was real. The hijacking of Flight 305 had begun. Unlike the violent hijackings that would plague the years to come, Cooper's was eerily calm and professional. He wasn't panicked, he wasn't political, he was specific. He dictated his demands to the flight crew, who relayed them to the ground. First, $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills. In today's money, that's over $1.5 million. Second, 4 parachutes, 2 primary chutes and 2 reserve chutes. Third, a fuel truck ready to refuel the plane as soon as they landed in Seattle. The demand for 4 parachutes was a brilliant piece of psychological strategy. It created uncertainty. Was he planning on taking a hostage? Were the parachutes for the crew? It ensured no one would try to sabotage the equipment. For 2 hours, Flight 305 circled around Seattle, while authorities on the ground scrambled to meet the Skyjacker's demands. The FBI gathered the money, photographed all the $10,000 bills, and sourced the parachutes from a local skydiving school. At 5:39 p.m., the plane landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The exchange was made. An airline employee brought the cash and parachutes abroad. In return, Cooper kept his word, releasing all 33 passengers and 2 of the flight attendants. He kept only the essential flight crew. During the refueling, Cooper outlined his new flight plan. They were to fly to Mexico City, but with very specific, very strange instructions. The plane had to stay below 10,000 feet. The landing gear had to remain down, and the wing flaps had to be lowered to 15 degrees. And critically, the rear cabin door, the ventral air stair on a 727, had to be left unlocked. The pilots argued it wasn't safe to fly that way, but Cooper was insistent. He knew the plane, he knew its capabilities. At approximately 7:40 p.m., they were back in the air. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper told the remaining crew to go to the cockpit and stay there. The last time anyone saw him, he was tying something around his waist, presumably the money bag. At around 8 p.m., a warning light flashed in the cockpit, indicating that the air stair had been opened. The pressure in the cabin changed. Over the intercom, the pilot asked, "Is everything okay back there?" There was no answer. At 8:13 p.m., somewhere over the dense, stormy forest of southwestern Washington, the crew felt a sudden upward movement in the plane's tail section. Dan Cooper, the man in the business suit, had lowered the staircase into a freezing 200-mile-per-hour wind and jumped out into the night, into the history. What followed was one of the most extensive and expensive manhunts in US history, codenamed Operation Norjack. The FBI, with help from the military, scoured the suspected jump zone. They searched on foot, with helicopters, and even with planes, and they found nothing. No parachute, no briefcase, no money, and no man. The FBI was left with only the clues he'd left on the plane: his black clip-on tie, a tie clip, and 8 cigarette butts. For decades, these yielded little. But in 2017, citizen scientists examining the tie with modern technology made a fascinating discovery: particles of pure, unalloyed titanium. In the 1970s, this was a rare metal, suggesting Cooper may have worked as a manager or engineer in a high-tech chemical or aerospace firm. For 9 years, that was it. The trail was ice cold. Then, in 1980, a miracle. An 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram, vacationing with his family on the banks of Columbia River, found 3 rotting packets of cash buried in the sand. The FBI confirmed the serial numbers. It was part of Cooper's ransom, $5,800 in all. But this discovery only deepened the mystery. The location was far from the primary search zone. How did it get there? And where was the rest of the $200,000? With no body and few clues, the FBI investigated over 800 suspects. Over the years, a few have stood out as the most compelling. First, Richard McCoy Jr., a Vietnam vet and skydiving enthusiast. McCoy pulled nearly identical copycat hijacking just 5 months after Cooper's. He successfully parachuted from a 727 with $500,000. But McCoy was caught, and while he never confessed to being Cooper, the similarities are uncanny. Next, Dwayne Weber, a World War II vet with a long criminal record. On his deathbed in 1995, he told his wife, "I am Dan Cooper." She later recalled a nightmare he had where he talked about leaving his fingerprints on the plane's rear staircase. And finally, Robert Rockstra, a decorated pilot and an Army veteran with a history of explosive training and criminal charges. He was a prime FBI suspect in the late 70s. When confronted by investigators, Rockstra was always coy, never fully admitting or denying the accusations. He passed away in 2019, taking any secrets he had with him. In 2016, the FBI officially closed the active D.B. Cooper investigation after 45 years, leaving the case unsolved. The biggest question remains: did he survive the jump? Many in law enforcement believe he couldn't have. He jumped into a freezing storm over a rugged terrain at night wearing only a business suit. His chances of survival were almost zero, but others aren't so sure. He was calm, he was prepared, and he knew the plane. Perhaps he was an experienced paratrooper who knew exactly what he was doing and had help on the ground. In the end, that's what makes the story of D.B. Cooper a modern legend. It's the perfect crime, a story of a quiet, ordinary man who took on the system and won, melting away into American folklore. He became an anti-hero, a symbol of rebellion. So what do you think? Was Cooper a master criminal who pulled off the impossible and lived out his days in quiet anonymity? Or was he a desperate man whose incredible gamble ended that very night, his body and his fortune lost forever to the vast American wilderness? The truth, it seems, is still out there. Let me know your theories about DB Cooper in the comments below. Who do you think he was? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into history's greatest unsolved mysteries.